Marker.
The first time I read the script, I got through 10 pages and I was by myself in my apartment and I put it down because I was too scared to keep reading.
I read it like Alice in Wonderland meets Dante's Inferno.
I read it, I think, a week later in the afternoon in the sun, and that's how I got through it. But that's what attracted me to the piece as well, because it was definitely a page turner and it was something that freaked me out.
When I first read the script, I was riveted. It's a spectacular piece. There's so much to it, so many levels, so many complexities, and so many wonderful themes that are permeating throughout.
She's a child! She's just a child!
It was quite scary. I just thought, wow, who's thought of this? How did they get these ideas?
My first experience of Silent Hill was 5 years ago, and I play on PlayStation 1, Silent Hill 1. And I remember I was something like 3 or 4 hours into the game when I realized that I was playing a game which was completely unique, absolutely frightening, and basically one of the few games that actually could become a movie.
Cut! I have produced the last 3 movies of Christophe, and on the set of our last movie, he told me, you know, I'm playing to a video game called Silent Hill. It's fantastic, it's scary.
And like everybody said, really? Is it possible to be frightened by a game? And I said, yeah, and it's one of the most absolute fear I ever experienced in my whole life.
That's maybe the first game that we can say it was mature. It was conceptualized in a very mature way.
So then it was an adventure, because, you know, we had to go convince the Japanese people that produced the game, Konami, to give us the right to make the movie. And the only things that make the difference is the vision of Christophe.
And action!
They were anxious about the level of faith that a director will bring to an eventual adaptation, because that game has such a cult following.
The fan base for Silent Hill is very, very protective of the game. So we've been very careful to listen to the fans and to maintain the suspense and the areas that they really feel strongly about, like the means of illumination in the darkness and certain key characters and antagonists, so to speak.
He has a very surrealist sort of vision of the game, and the game itself sort of explores the boundaries of reality, and that's what the film does.
The game of Silent Hill is an experience.
Silent Hill exists by itself. It has no equivalent. It's something frightening, it's something disturbing, it's something very beautiful. It's not only about fear, it's about emotion. There is not so many games that make you cry. I never adapted a game before, and I realized when I was doing that it was completely different. When you're adapting a game, you're adapting something that actually you have lived for real. You have the feeling to have been there and bring back some truth about what was the experience to face that adventure.
And the story is basically a background. And what was important in the idea to do a movie is bring back in the foreground that background story. So that was the most important challenge.
Rose!
When Christophe was setting out to make this film, he and Sammy called me up. And so I came in, and next thing I knew, it was, you know, what if we were to do this? And Christophe was, you know, what if we reinvented the wheel? And such began, you know, a multi-month process of hammering out a first draft. Whenever I approach anything to adapt, you have to be willing to completely disassemble it and to create something new. The one element that you must remain true to is the spirit of the material. If you're not true to the spirit of the material, then you've completely lost.
Every gamer that played this video game at home in the dark, I think will enjoy being in this theater, in the dark again, having the same feeling and the same approach.
The other thing we strive to do is to make it logical on a level that those who have no idea what the game is about will understand and appreciate the suspense, horrific moments, and the plotline.
Sharon!
I see her! She's there!
Sharon!
We wanted to create something that derived elements from the Silent Hill games and the Silent Hill universe, but was a bit of a creature on its own. Christoph, on one hand, remained profoundly true to the source material, and I remained as true as any human could attempt to the spirit of the material. In fact, we would sit around with the game during the writing of the movie. We would, more than anything, study how the camera moved as it travels through the game. Number of elements from the game and created sort of a composite.
These games are very frightening because the characters are very emotional and basically they are very vulnerable.
The characters in the game are one dimension. And it's not a problem because a game is like an experience where you have to face iconic character. For example, there is a character named Dahlia. If we want to transpose her on the paper, we understand that she has not enough depth for an actor or for an actress. We decide to make her much more gray than black. And that's what we try to do with the different characters of Silent Hill. When you have to invite the audience to follow you into a crazy world, it's good that you make it through a very simple motive, like the love of a woman for a kid.
Christoph has reworked the idea and making it a woman searching for her daughter.
The main theme of the film is motherhood. Who's a good mother? Who's a bad mother?
It's okay, baby. Everything's gonna be okay.
The lead character of Silent Hill 1 is a man named Harry Mason.
And he worked very well in the game, but when we start to write him, respecting his personality, we found that it's a woman. I don't think that it's important if the main character is wearing a dress or a pants. What is important is that we'll preserve the atmosphere of the game, which is the most important thing.
So we decide that Harry Mason will become Rose. Sometimes the fan can be shocked to hear that, because they know so well Silent Hill through the game. But I'm myself a gamer, I'm a true follower of the Silent Hill mythology, and a game is a game, and a film is a film.
I think what's really exciting about this movie is the cast. There's a series of fresh faces, actors that you may be familiar with, but you haven't seen them 1,000 times before. They're going to bring life to the characters.
Go! Go, go, go!
When I did the casting, I very deliberately went toward actors from independent film, because they bring with them something different, a different quality. Actresses like Radha Mitchell, Deborah Karanger, Alice Krige, of course Laurie Holden. You know, it's much more exciting to see somebody who doesn't used to do this kind of film. The audience of this type of movie love that.
For the role of Rose, we needed somebody with that blend of vulnerability, but strength and determination as well. You have to feel her fear, but also appreciate when she stands up to all these terrifying moments.
We spent lots of time finding the perfect Rose in terms of the sensibility that Christoph was having on this character.
I was looking for somebody who, for me, was sophisticated and somebody very vulnerable. And I think that Radha Mitchell has both quality.
We have to leave. Do you understand? The darkness is coming.
It's very easy to fall in love with Radha Mitchell. There's a freshness and energy and excitement at life. There's this original look to her, all of which are precisely what we needed for the central character to lead us through this horrific environment.
For the first couple of days on set, I just ran and ran and ran. It was like run, Radha, run. As the story goes on, the character gets tougher and stronger, and so hopefully you'll see that in the performance. We've also been playing the game, and that has a definite effect on your performance as well. That's the sort of preparation. It's kind of primal training. Christophe is focused on female characters. There's something unique about seeing sci-fi, or this sci-fi genre with just females leading the story in a way. And he's almost kind of exoticized the idea of femininity by polarizing it with the male characters who are sort of grounded in reality, and all the women are in this kind of fantasy nightmare.
Rose! Sharon!
It's a wonderful thing to work with Sean Bean. The man is so polished and professional in his work. Once he and Christophe had established who this character Christopher is, Sean Bean is that character.
I'm in the real world, as it were, and I'm looking for my wife, and my daughter, who are in another dimension of time.
My wife. She keeps me realistic.
We cast the part of Christopher, and it was the last one that we cast. And Sean Bean was a dream for us.
He has a warmth of personality that's always there, no matter what role he plays.
He has this ambiguous quality. And it was interesting to invite this ambiguity into a very positive character. The character of the husband looking for his wife.
I think Christopher goes through quite a lot of heartbreak whilst trying to find his wife and daughter. He's in quite a desperate state throughout the film.
Put both hands on the wheel.
We needed to have a Sybil who was strong, authoritative, but empathetic and could make all of us care when she eventually will sacrifice herself. Laurie Holden's perfect for all that. She has all of those qualities.
This is by far my coolest action role. She's an action gal, but she's got a heart. You know, she's a real person.
What I like about Sybil is that there is a duality. She is very strong, but is very misunderstood.
She's mine. She's mine.
In the role of Dahlia, we were very, very lucky to have Deborah Kara Unger, a tremendous actress who was willing to play this role.
We always want to work with her. When Christophe wrote this part of Dahlia, it was already somewhere in the mind that Deborah Unger will play the part.
When Christophe proposed to me the idea of being able to work together, I said yes immediately, and then I read the script. Christophe and I have had a professional relationship for nearly 10 years.
She's fearless. She will have no problem with looking as strange or as extreme as any director asks her to.
For a true beauty like Deborah Kara Unger to agree to do that, I find amazing.
I've never played a part like Cassandra Dahlia before. Dahlia's been a much more complicated character than I anticipated her being. It's surprising to me that I like her so much. I love going to work every morning.
I think a lot of who Dahlia is what Deborah invested her with, and just the way that she looks and so on. A lot of that came from Deborah's concept of the character.
I visited every link on every fan site, and I personally got very influenced by the gamers.
Take her! Burn her! Burn her as a witch!
Well, you couldn't find anybody more different from Alice Krige than Christabella. Alice is incredibly playful and sweet and generous. She's got this enthusiasm and the imagination of a child. And not many people have that, and I was quite inspired.
When I first read the script, and this is not to my credit, I thought, what is this? Is this what sort of science fiction / horror? I didn't even know it was based on a game. Never played a computer game. I don't have a child. My nieces and nephews live thousands of miles away. And then I had to read it again, and I started to see the resonances.
We must burn this child!
Alice, she's bigger than life, And I think that Alice brings a dimension to Christabella.
Christabella is one of those characters who can so easily become a caricature. And only someone with Alice's strength and focus and really precise technique could possibly create this character.
I was very anxious about the language.
Once again, we're locked in mortal battle.
Christabella's speech is difficult to get right.
Many times I said the main character of this movie, one of the main characters of the movie is a little girl of 10 who's going to play 4 parts, including something really evil. Where am I going to find a little girl who's able to do that? And not find only a little girl able to do that, but find also a little girl with parents happy to let their little girl do that.
When I first met Christoph, we were in the production office, and he said that at first he was worried that he wouldn't be able to find someone to play all 3 characters that were so strange.
I will remember always the day Jodelle came at the office, and she was walking into the office saying, "Where is the director? Where is the director?"
He was watching a 15-hour miniseries. He watched it over the weekend that I had done.
And I say, "Hi, Jodelle, how are you?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine." I say, "You know, Jodelle, you're going to play 3 different characters in this film, and one of them is the devil. I always wanted to play the devil."
He just said, "Perfect," so I'm here.
When Jodelle plays Darkolessa, it's almost like she's transformed and she's somebody else completely. And it's really quite eerie and bizarre.
I've only ever played like a normal little girl like Sharon a couple of times, but most of my roles are like Darkolessa. I played an evil clone once.
And I don't know how this delightful little gem who likes pink can so easily grasp terrifying moments and then cut and crack a silly little girl joke.
She's still every frame. I think she's somebody that's going to go very far into the cinema.
Feel the resistance into your arm.
To watch these transformations in these women has been very, very fun, and all of the characters are so distinct. It's certainly a female-driven piece, which is a delight. It creates a very playful environment where we all have clearly different things to offer each other as characters and, of course, as individuals.
Every day, everybody's been challenged and everybody's been really pushing their limits and doing the best work that they can and taking everything very seriously and really putting their heart into it. Really, there's a lot of love in it, and as much as it's a kind of dark, dark story, there's a lot of love behind the making of this story. What Christoph uses in the rendition of horror films is the emotion of disgust. And he constantly disgusts us with his different, visions and insinuations.
Normally, horror films are about confined space. It's about a house, a castle. It's very, very rarely more than that. For Silent Hill, we have to deal with a complete town.
We basically have created the entire town of Silent Hill, which is completely deserted, covered in ash, and occasionally consumed by the most malevolent spirits imaginable.
It's been such a gift. We actually have this wonderful atmosphere and these sets that just really set the stage for us to play.
But I think it's great that it's slightly like that.
Since a long time, I wanted to work with Carol Spear, who's a very important production designer.
She's facing it and they just bend slightly.
Silent Hill is a town that has been abandoned for 30 years. The paint is peeling, the walls are crumbling. We had to show things in like 3 or even 4 variations. I mean, we had a set sometimes, other than having one look, had 3 or 4 looks.
We have 4 different Silent Hill. So we have a Silent Hill as it exists now today. We have Silent Hill like it was 30 years ago. We have Silent Hill in the fog, and we have a Silent Hill when the darkness arrives and when all the nightmares and the creatures appear.
Basically, there's a new set every 60 seconds. So it's a visual feast. There's constantly something new to look at.
We were dealing with 106 different sets and locations in the film. It's huge. I mean, for a horror film, I think it's maybe the first time it happened.
It was a real challenge to try and put all the sets together and just to create the texture. I have a passion for movies with texture, and texture just, comes with the aging of sets. So I like sets that can have some age and also some history to them.
Quiet, action.
We found Silent Hill in Brantford. It was probably one of the best finds that we had found in terms of finding a location.
She told us, I know a town not far away from Toronto. You will have the type of industrial look that you were looking for to build around that the universe of Silent Hill.
Some of the businesses had closed out. They were going through some renovations, so a lot of sections of the whole street had closed down because they were going to renovate it. We were able to go in and redress, and basically to make it look like the town had been abandoned for 30 years.
Then you have the sets in the foggy world where there's a certain benign malevolence to them.
Everything's gray, there's not much color. The color is more desaturated. Everything is falling apart and dilapidated.
The mountain was just the bane of my existence. It was, it looked like a road, a mountain road. We built it so we wouldn't have to do all those CGI shots putting in fog, and the only way to guarantee that we could control the fog was to build it indoors.
So we spent 8 weeks building the side of the mountain and then putting a road in and asphalting it. Then the darkness, everything is rusted, everything's decaying even further. It's just a world of rust and blood. And as we get further and further into the story, it goes from a very slight bit of rusting as she goes into the first set of darkness up to the hospital at the end where the walls are almost covered in blood.
It's quite horrific, it's almost like a mental hospital that's covered in blood and gore. And it's just very spooky and very disturbing.
Maybe get some of those fake blood.
I like very much the set where we have the darknesses playing around because it's a hospital, but everything is decay. Everything doesn't exist except in most of your nightmare vision.
The hospital was 2 sections. We had a location that we used for the upper floors of the hospital. It was actually a school that we changed into a hospital. That was all aged and made to look like it had been abandoned for 30 years. And then the elevator section was built separately and shot separately. And then this section was the basement. This is the main corridor of the hospital set in the basement. It was revamped and used to make up several different corridors within the space.
They give us back our purity.
Purity! The sets that I've worked on are remarkably beautiful in the sense that they really serve the universe of the film.
We looked for an old factory that was a big, large space with a lot of texture that we could put this meeting hall in the middle, that they had this sort of secret meeting place. The design of the factory is based on looking at a lot of photographs of old Amish meeting halls, and they're very simple designs and very, very straightforward, and I was trying to keep the lines very straight. After they finished shooting the meeting hall scenes, we came back in, ripped it apart, tore the hole through the floor, and spent a long time burning wood out in the back of the studio and brought it in and basically created an aftermath of the fire. It was one of the dirtiest sets we worked on. People would come out of there at the end of the day in their white coveralls, totally black.
My favorite set is the old school that we worked at. And it used to be a girls' school, a real girls' school, which is good because that's what it was supposed to be.
The school was interesting. It was fun to do because we cheated so much. We actually had a school location, but the actual layout of this real school and the layout of the school that we shot were 2 different things. And we were cheating rooms that were corridors and rooms that were supposedly off of one another. Some parts of the school were in other buildings. It was a bit of a puzzle putting it all together while we were shooting. In the classroom, we had to deal with 3 stages. We tried to prep it as much as possible at the beginning, and we tried to shoot it in order. We shot it with the past first, but they prepared a lot of the walls first. They used the release agent, which was just a simple lard underneath all of the paint, so that we had a nice clean paint job for the past, and then for the Foggy World we could release a lot of that paint and have a lot of peeling paint. We had a lot of areas prepared behind the walls that we could take tiles away and exposed bricks and studs. It's hard to say what my favorite set was. I mean, I enjoyed working on the church because it's just the scale of it.
I walked into it and I had a visceral response to the space. The degree of detail and specificity evoke an emotion in you, being in them as an actor.
Basically, we are looking inside the church.
The church was one of the first things that we started to draw up because we had an idea at the beginning. We did a lot of reference and looking at different churches that were in the Toronto area and outside of Toronto. We wanted it to be dark. We kept it fairly dark, lots of wood. It's sort of a real church in the typical traditional layout of a church, but it doesn't have the altar area. Instead it has the painting of the burning witch, not normal for a typical church. And then it has the sunken pit for the meeting areas. We spent about 8 weeks building the church. The painting was done by a scenic artist here in Toronto. His name is John Fraser. And he probably spent 3 weeks working on the painting at night while we were building the set around him. He'd come in as we went home, and he'd put the lights on and paint away. We'd come in the morning and there'd be a little more built. We actually took pictures of some of the art department people in some of the costumes of the and painted them into the painting. You probably wouldn't be able to pick them out, but there are a few art department people in there. We used Deborah as the guide for the painting. We didn't want it to be Dahlia, but we wanted it to look like it could have been an ancestor of Dahlia's or Christabellas. The ladders were based on a design that we found. It was an old German etching of a witch burning. We decided to hang the miners from the ceiling in the church after seeing photographs of how miners in actual coal mines would store their gear on pulley systems as they came up out of the mines. They would have baskets with their masks and their work clothes in it. So we thought it was an interesting idea and decided to store all of our miners' costumes in the church this way.
Action!
Then we tried to find the exterior of the church, and we looked at a lot of different churches just for our look of the church because we didn't really want it to look too Christian. We wanted it